Well, welcome to another edition of the Buyer's Guide. We've been going through quite a few ground baits recently, and I know you've been enjoying this series, and if you have, please give this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, because that lets me know that you'd like me to continue with this series and going through lots of these different ground baits that are giving you an insight into what these mixes are about, what they mix up like, what they perform like underwater, and that's all without you having to part with your hard-earned cash. So I hope it's been of use to many of you. In this video we are going to be looking at one of the biggest names in ground bait, one of the names that goes back years and years and years, right when I was a kid. The biggest brand back in the early 90s when I was going through England trials and the youth scene and the intermediate scene, it was Van den Eynde, all about Marcel Van den Eynde. They've obviously, as you would expect, have begun and have been for a year or two now, been releasing more commercial orientated mixes designed at catching carp and bigger fish. Now the mix that we're going to be looking at in this video is part of the Carp Master range. Some of you will have seen these. These are available all over Europe now, and it's an interesting mix, this one, because it is part of the Carp Master range, like I say, and it's all about attraction, it's all about the scent, it's all about the smell. And when we're targeting bigger fish, sometimes, certainly on more coloured waters where fish rely on sight less, you know, certainly during the summer months when fish might be relying more on scent, then strong mixes like this really come into play, and that's why I've been looking forward to mixing this one up for you. We're just going to have a look at how much feed content is in there, and also once it's mixed we're also going to be putting it in the tank and see how it performs. So first of all, let's have a look at the packaging and let me tell you a little bit about the mix. Well, as you can see, it's got some really nice clear branding, Carp Master Ground Bait, that's the name of the range. But before we have a look at this, let's have a quick look at what the press release says about it. This is the guide that they send out to all of the stockists of Van den Eynde. Let's just go over to page 2, here we go. Now this mix that we're using, it's the EXPANDA garlic. As the name suggests, it's got EXPANDA pellets in there. Fish are just that's what they're grown on these days, you know, the fish that have been bred to go into commercial waters. Expanders have been their natural bait, and it's got the word garlic there. I haven't opened this bag yet, and I'm expecting that to be reflected really strongly in the scent of the mix when we mix it, so I'm expecting it being a very smelly mix. So let's see what they've got to say about it. EXPANDA garlic. EXPANDA pellets are used for raising many fish, and this explains why they work so well, especially on lakes. We have decided to extend our range and to work with the garlic scent. Garlic is a herb that is ideal for keeping fish on your site during a more difficult fishery or during the colder period. So basically it's a mix that's designed all around the scent. You know, it's about a strong scented ground bait that's going to hopefully keep fish in your peg longer. So let's have a quick look at the packaging. Okay, Carp Master Ground Bait, powerful attraction, high feed content, so that's telling us it's got lots of feed in here, which obviously we're going to see. Exclusive stimulants, EXPANDA garlic, clearly marked on there for you to pick out when it's on the shelf, and these are 1 kilo bags. We've also got a nice window in the packaging which is giving us an idea of what the mix is like. As you can see, it looks quite fine actually from here, but we don't, you know, we'll see more about that when we mix it up. So it's quite a light coloured mix. It will darken down when we mix it, but that's what the mix looks like. What else have we got here on the back? We've got mixing guidelines, which is always good. They're recommending that you actually do it in 3 stages, mix your ground bait, so that's a nice little guide there for you. What else we've got? We've got various different languages on here. We'll have a quick look at what it says in the UK. This new ground bait range was developed with the ever-increasing popularity of modern commercial carp fishing in mind. Not only these ground baits are irresistible, also many other species that often live in the same waters like bream, tench, crucians and F1s will be attracted to them. We selected only the finest ingredients, fish meals, so we know it's a fish meal mix. You probably would have guessed it was going to be a fish meal mix anyway because of the carp label on it. Okay, fish meals, oils, saying there are oils in there, so this could be reflected in when we mix it, and attractors for the production of these ground baits. Okay, so that's it. These are 1 kilo bags. I'm just looking for evidence of a date on there. There we go, there's a date there, which must be the use by or the best use by date, and that's 16/10 2022, so it's got a long life on it, and I've had this probably 5 months now, so they have got a long life on them. So let's get it in the bowl. I've got a new feature to this section. It's where when I put the groundbait into the bowl, we're going to put it through a sieve just to see if there are any large feed particles in there, and then let's get it mixed up and see what it mixes like. Okay, so the first thing I'm expecting is a strong smell. I can't smell anything through the bag. Sometimes you can actually get a whiff of what the groundbait is like, but I'm going to open this carefully, because if it does smell strong, I don't want it all over the tackle room. Yeah, garlic. Wow, that's really strong. That took my breath away a little bit. Right, okay, I dare say that's going to get stronger as I mix it, but garlic, that is, I'll be absolutely honest with you, at this stage, that is all I can smell in there, garlic. So that's what this mix is all about. It's all about the scent and the flavour. Okay, so let's get it in the bowl. Let's see if there's any larger feed particles in there. There are some feed particles in there, but they don't look really large. Now don't forget that when I'm talking about feed particles in this mix, I'm talking about them dry. These are in the dry state, so when we add water to this, those larger feed particles will take on water and expand and get bigger. That's just what happens to groundbait when you mix it. So these are the dry particles, and once it's mixed, you'll obviously see how large those particles are when they've taken on some water. So let's just pop that through there. Well, there you go. There's not much there at all, is there? There's some yellow in there. I don't know if that's maize, if it's corn. I'm not sure what those yellow bits are. But there you go. I mean, they are the only large particles that are in there at this stage. And if I remove the sieve, you can see there is quite a bit of feed in there, but there's no major, you know, really large particles in there. So let's get it mixed up and see what it mixes like. Now I'm doing this by hand because I know most people don't use a drill, and I am mixing it in a rectangular bowl, okay, which I know is not the usual way of doing things, but I'm filming this and it's just better to do this for filming by doing it this way, okay. So you're just going to make sure with a square or rectangular bowl that you get right into the corners, because you don't want any to keep any dry ingredients in there. All I can smell right now is garlic. That's really, it's really kicked off the scent of that garlic now. So I'll just keep adding water a little bit at a time. And what we'll see is after the resting period, we'll see if those larger, you know, if those feed particles have actually soaked up some of the water and everything. There we go. So it's going to mix up a little bit lumpy, but that's, like I said, that's because I'm doing this by hand. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. I'm not going to add too much, because what we're going to be doing is there's a new feature to this series now where I actually test the groundbait in two different states. One is in a dry state and one is in a damp state, and that is so we can see how they perform side by side once they're actually in the tank. There we go. So that's darkened down quite a bit, actually. Darkened down quite a lot. Let me just compare it to the bag for you. I'll put some in my hand, some of the dry ingredient. I mean, all groundbaits get darker when you wet them, but difference between the two. So yeah, so we know it's going to darken down. A few lumps in there, quite a few flecks of yellow in there as well. I'm not sure what that yellow is, but as you can see, I expect if you put more water with this, I expect those bits to get larger. So that's it. So that mixes up all right. All I can smell is garlic. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I cannot smell anything else. Okay. There is fish meal in there, but you can't really smell the fish meal because of the smell of the garlic. So I'm going to leave that to rest now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give that exactly 20 minutes, just like we've done with every single groundbait in this series. Give it 20 minutes. I'm going to partition half of it off as a dry mix, so we're going to try a nice explosive type feeder effect with it, and the other one I'm going to dampen it down a little bit and see how they perform side by side in the tank. So I'm going to give that 20 minutes. I'm going to pop it through a sieve and we'll have a look at it once it's settled. Well, that's been exactly 20 minutes. As expected, it's dried out quite a bit. I'll put it through a rough sieve, quite a wide sieve, because I don't want to fine it down too much, because I don't want to take out too many of these ingredients, if any, you know, because we want to see how it's going to perform in its natural state. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to partition half of that off. So this half here will be, that's the dry mix, so I'm going to leave that dry in its dry state, and then over here we're going to put some extra water with this here. So the first test will be, can we over wet it, and if we can, what does it over wet like? So let's get some extra water in that corner. Like I say, most applications with this sort of ground bait may usually tend to be with a feeder, but as you can see there, that is over wetted quite nicely. Okay, so you can fish with it all over wetted. If you're fishing on a pole, for example, you might want to over wet it and use it as a slop on a pole line, or obviously if you want to over wet it when you're feeder fishing as well, which is something that we do, then this mix will over wet, and the wetter that is, the stronger the garlic smell is as well. So be prepared for that. Okay, so we can over wet it, which is great. Now what I'm going to do with this bit just here is I'm going to add some extra water to it and just dampen it down how you know we'd normally have it if we were fishing it with a feeder, not in its dry state, just in like an almost inert kind of state. All right, so usually when we're targeting bigger fish, you wouldn't want bits fizzing off the ground bait and that sort of stuff, but sometimes, you know, you might need to do that just to get the fish in your peg initially, and that is something that we do. Sometimes we might start with a drier mix and then switch to a more inert mix as the session progresses, or use the dry mix to get fish in your peg and then use a more inert, damper mix to control the fish once they're in the peg, you know, try and get them down on the deck and all that sort of thing. So that is more like the state that we would use it in. Okay, so it's not over wet, but it's damp, it's inert, and I'll compare it to the dry side for you so you can see the difference in colours. So the wetter one is darker, as you'd expect, and then we've got the dry mix there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, the new feature to this series is comparing both these different types of mixes in the tank at the same time. So I've got two feeders here. I'm going to load one with the inert mix, one with the dry mix, and let's see how they compare underwater. Okay, so we've got two feeders here, two cage feeders, fine wire cage feeders. We always use the same feeders. These are the new Matrix ones, the side weighted. Okay, they're a fine mesh, and the reason why I'm using a fine mesh is because the water can get to the ground bait really quickly, so that's going to show us if it will break down quickly. Okay, so they're both exactly the same feeders. So the first one I'm going to load with the dry mix. Okay, and I'm not going to pack it in too much. Like I say, it's always kind of medium consistency. That would cast 45 to 50 meters quite easily and stay intact. Okay, and the other one we're going to put the more inert mix in that one, and again just squeeze it to the same consistency, because we want to compare the two as similar as what we can on a level playing field, as they say. So there we go. All right, so when I drop these in the tank, I'm going to put the drier one on the left and the more inert one on the right hand side. Okay, and it'll be interesting to see how they compare. So let's see if we can get these in the right spot straight away for you. So the inert one first, there, and the dry mix there. And there's not a hell of a lot of difference between the two, to be honest. I expected more dry ingredients coming off the left hand one, off the more active explosive type mix. That's very surprising. That surprised me, that I expected more activity coming off the left hand one, but there isn't as much. But don't forget, this is a big fish mix. It is designed for carp in mind. It's designed for bigger fish, and that is obviously being reflected in the way that these ingredients are behaving. Like I said, before we put these in the tank, using a dry mix like this it's not something you'd normally do for carp and that sort of thing. So that is obviously reflected in the mix. The biggest difference straight away there, if I just move the camera, is that you can see that the left hand one, the dry mix, is breaking down from the feeder quicker than the other mix, which is more inert. But as regards actual particles and feed coming off the feeder, there's virtually nothing coming off that. There is some, as you'd expect, but that's what happens with a dry mix. But I'm very surprised at that, in the sense that looking at it, I would have thought there were more ingredients coming off it, but that's because it's designed for carp and bigger fish. So the bigger particles that are in there that we've left slightly drier are obviously sinking particles. They're ones that are not really light and buoyant and are going to float up to the top. There's almost nothing on the surface of the water, very little, And that's great. I like that because the mix is doing what it says on the tin, as they say, or on the bag. It's for carp, it's for bigger fish, and even in its drier state you could still use that, and you're not getting loads of fizzing off it that could attract the attentions of small fish, because that's ultimately why we go down the inert ground bait route when we're after better fish, because you don't want to be attracting lots of small fish, and that's what more active mixers can do. So as you can see, now the left hand one is just about finished. That's completely empty now. And then if we look at the right hand one now, that is still almost half full. It's just kind of melting away. There's bits of air coming off there, as you can see. There are the odd particles coming up as well. But as you can see, by over wetting it like what we've done, we've really slowed down the way that ground bait is emptying from the feeder and actually breaking down. So that's, it's exactly what it's designed to do. Good, that's great to see that. That surprised me, that, because looking at it on paper I would have thought there would be more particles rising off the feeder on the dry mix, but there isn't. So that just shows that it is a mix that even if you don't mix it bang on, then you're still going to get a great response for bigger fish, because you're not getting loads of stuff coming off it. Very interesting. And as you can see now, it's still, the inert one is still got quite a bit of ground bait left in it, so you really slowed it down. If you were putting that in on a pole line, then by making it more inert, that would just break down much slower, the ball of ground bait on the bottom, which is what we like to do for bigger fish. Now this mix is, it comes in 1 kilo bags, and to be honest, the last time I uploaded any videos of the Van den Eynde range, I got inundated with messages from people who wanted to get hold of this mix, or that particular mix that I was talking about in that video. Unfortunately, because Van den Eynde is such a European-wide company, then the best way to source this kind of a ground bait is to just source it online. And I don't mean to buy direct, to have it delivered to your home, but I mean to find out where the local stockists are to you, because Van den Eynde are in so many different countries. Some of the mixers and some of the brands that we've featured right here on this channel are almost exclusive to the UK, and it's very easy for me to pinpoint local stockists up and down the country where a lot of English residents can get hold of the ground baits. But I know from experience with the Van den Eynde kind of mixers that you are far better. Just type it in on Google. It's EXPANDA garlic. I'll show you the bag, because it's not spelled as in expander like we would do in England. So it's EXPANDA garlic, and it's 1 kilo bags. As far as I know, they are only available in 1 kilo bags. But that's a very interesting mix. I'm looking forward to using that this summer. I'm going to get out on the bank over the next few weeks with this mix. Whilst the commercial waters are quite coloured, whilst fish are relying heavily on scent, because I think this could be a cracking big fish mix. And garlic, I think, is something that I don't think we use quite enough of in match fishing. I know a lot of the specimen lads use it for catching bigger carp, so this is definitely going to be one that I'm going to get out on the bank and try out. So I hope you've enjoyed that bit of an insight into this mix. It's a new mix to lots of people. If you have enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos in this series, just hit subscribe. If you like looking at more in-depth things like this, mixers and what you can do with them and the versatility of mixers, then you might want to have a look at my other channel, Patron TV, which is more in-depth fishing videos. The link is just there. So thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this insight, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.